Hello and welcome. I'm really pleased this evening we have Joan van den Brink. Good evening, Joan, and how are you?
Good evening, Rudy. I am great, thank you. It's lovely to be with you again.
Yeah, great to see you again. So this evening we're going to talk about why differently understood together.
hmm
So tell us, what inspired you to write Why Differently Understood Together? And how did your own experiences shape the message you wanted to share?
Yeah, great question. So, I have been involved in diversity and inclusion work for a while. And as you can imagine, being a black woman and daughter of the Windrush generation, it's important to create inclusive spaces.
Absolutely.
I'm one of the many roles that I have is as a coach trainer, so I train people to be coaches. And
Mhm,
we're getting more and more participants who declare themselves as neurodivergent and wanting accommodations.
mhm,
And probably about just under 2 years ago, we had a request from a particular individual who had complex needs. And I think I did what I could. It was quite daunting because there were complex needs. Myself and my co-facilitator, we took extra care in terms of how we created the learning environment, checked in with this individual during the breaks, etc., etc. At the end of the first 2 days, thought that we'd done a pretty good job. It seemed like a typical program. And about 2 weeks later, there was a formal complaint, an email complaint, that the module had not been facilitated in a way that took into account his needs and another neurodivergent participant. And I was devastated because I pride myself in being able to tune into people, to create safety so they feel they can be themselves and unlock deep learning. And I clearly hadn't done that. I discovered that this individual had gone back to his hotel room and cried because he felt that he couldn't fulfill the requirements of the program because he has needs.
mhm,
So, cut a long story short, the head of education met with the two individuals, and it transpired a lot of it was to do with the design of the program and how we signposted the different elements, what was the relevance. But there were some things where we have I guess, an expectation of how coaches should be. So,
mhm,
for example, we encourage coaches not to take notes because then if you're taking notes, you've got your head down and you're missing a lot of the information and the connection with your client. So we encourage, but being the trainers, we're seen as that's a law or a rule, if you like. And so that's an example for this neurodivergent participant. That was difficult because they need to write to be able to process information.
yeah,
Wasn't aware of that. So
yeah,
that's an example of how the program and how we facilitated didn't enable this person to feel they could be themselves. So we put in some extra safeguarding, if you like, tutorials. We changed the way facilitated to signpost a little bit more, try to encourage people to be themselves, which is actually at the heart of the program. But that experience jolted me out of my complacency of thinking, yeah, I'm a great facilitator, I'm a great coach, and set me on a journey to understand more about neurodiversity, neurodivergence, because that's a hidden difference because neurodivergent people mask, and so you won't always know, as I didn't, any distress that they're feeling. So that put me on a journey to one, understand, and two, I wanted to see if I could find a way of creating more inclusive environments that were focused on neuro inclusion. So that was the genesis of the book.
Mhm. The book introduces a powerful framework built
Hmm.
around agape love, safety, identity, and dialogue.
Hmm.
So could you explain how these four elements work together to
Yeah.
foster genuine neuro inclusion?
Yeah, so to write the book, I interviewed people who have experience with neurodivergence, either being neurodivergent themselves or being in relationship with someone who's neurodivergent. So it could be a parent, could be a partner, could be a colleague, a sibling. And there were some elements that seemed to come through to me in terms of the best conditions for neurodivergent people to actually be able to be themselves, first of all. One was agape love, which is basically um, the love that's unconditional love. It's the
Mhm.
love that God showed to and his son to the world. So it's that kind of love. That's quite difficult
Yeah,
because
yeah,
neurodivergent people are not always easy to be with, but it's about saying, I accept you and cherish you as you are, not how I want you to be. So creating that, first of all, and then psychological safety. So by the time a neurodivergent child is about 10, they've had at least 10,000 negative messages. You're too lazy, you're too much, you're not working hard enough, etc., etc. You're weird. And so then they learn that actually being themselves is not okay. So what I'm proposing is we create the safety so they do feel it's okay to be themselves as they are. So that's the second part. And then our identity is quite complex. And I discovered this when I started doing diversity inclusion work and the intersectionality of different identities. And I think understanding our identities and our social identities enables us to understand how we show up in different settings. And so understanding how I'm showing up and also being curious about your identity and what that means for you enables us to know each other better. And then the final piece is dialogue. And that's about having a conversation where we don't know the answers. So it's about deep listening,
yeah.
it's about respecting, it's about suspending our knowing,
Mm.
and it's about voicing as well, voicing our truth. So I think those together enable us to, one, work through, okay, so if you have this need and I have this need, how can we understand each other and come together so that we can create new inclusion
Yeah.
that works for us all?
Mhm. As we say, all voices must be heard.
Yep, indeed. Yeah.
You've created a cast of characters to tell these stories.
Hmm.
Why did you choose this storytelling approach, and what do their journeys reveal about the shared experiences between neurodivergent and neurotypical people?
Yeah, as I said before, I
Mm,
interviewed a number of
mm,
people, and if we go back to that point about safety,
mm,
I wanted people to feel safe to tell their stories,
mhm,
and they were very moving. Some people got quite emotional as they told the stories.
mhm,
Some people described it as being cathartic and healing.
mm.
And so I didn't have like a formula or set of questions.
Okay.
And so what I wanted to do was, from listening to those stories, be able to paint different types of journeys that
Mm,
people go through with neurodivergence. And it's a way of people reflecting on their own experiences in a safe way rather than telling someone's actual story. These are composites of the different stories I've heard. So it was a combination of safety, but allowing people to see themselves or recognize others. And so then they could take the messages in a safer way.
Okay. So one of your key points is that neurotypical people also need to
Hmm.
make an effort to understand neurodivergent perspectives.
Yeah.
So what practical steps can workplaces take to put this into action?
Yeah, so I think it's, as always, starts with the leader.
That's all right.
Um, and the reason why I say neurotypical people need to make more of the effort is because neurodivergent people do it all the time. Because
Mhm,
the world is designed by and for neurotypical ways of being, then they study. So if I can't be me, I need to be more like the
mhm,
majority. Whereas as a neurotypical person with privilege, you know that thing
mhm,
about privilege, you don't
mhm,
think about it. So that's why I feel that first of all, neurotypical need to make more effort. So I think it starts with the leader, and often leaders have one-on-one conversations with their team members, but those conversations tend to be focused on the work. You know, what do you need to deliver? Are you on track? What support do you need, etc., etc.,
mhm,
and less about getting to know the individual. So if you think about that agape love,
mhm,
so it's about taking the time to connect human to human and not only to get to understand the individual over time because they're not going to reveal themselves initially. It's also that the leader reveals things about themselves so it feels safe for the neurodivergent individual to share more of who they are, what they their strengths are and the things that they struggle with. And I say that, but we also have to bear in mind that the leader themselves might be neurodivergent. But if the first thing is, I think, building that connection one on one. I think when you go to the team environment, it's about creating some norms,
mhm,
explicit norms. And I think it's being mindful that the norms that we think are good norms may not work for everybody. So, for example, we're on a Zoom call now, and they came into being or more prevalent during COVID. And I've heard quite a lot of people say, well, I insist that people have their cameras on
mhm,
because then we can see that people are really attending to the meeting and what's going on. But actually, quite a few neurodivergent people have sensory issues. So if the video camera's on, they may get distracted by the sensory information that's coming from the screen and therefore not be able to pay attention. And so, not always, but often it's better for them to have their video camera off so they can listen
mhm. Yeah.
and pay attention. So it's about thinking about the norms in a inclusive way, and so designing them with everyone in mind. Another one might be a lot of organizations have values and culture and codify them into behaviors, one of which is about collaborating effectively in teamwork. Well, that's going to look different to different people.
Right.
Some people, not just neurodivergent,
Mhm,
are much better at working by themselves because they don't get the distraction, they don't get the overwhelm of lots of interactions, or they like to get to the point and they don't see the necessity or want to engage in the social chit chat that
mhm.
oils a lot of the work. So it's about being mindful of actually what we think is uh, exemplar behavior may not be for a
Mhm,
neurodivergent person. So it's about as I say, thinking about the norms, but checking in, but not over checking in, because as you're probably aware, if you're in the minority and the majority always come to you for education, that gets emotionally taxing. I have to keep educating you on my experience so that you can do it. So it's a balance. But that's where it starts, and then it's about thinking about how do you run your meetings and all those kind of things.
Yes, indeed. There is a level of complexity,
Mm, indeed.
but
Yeah,
we still need to be sensitive to some of those
yeah.
actual issues.
Yeah, and I think if we pay attention to neurodivergent needs, we tend to benefit everyone.
Mm, of
You
course,
think
of course.
about anybody who's in the minority or who processes differently, or the language of the majority isn't their language, then taking the time to think about what's going to work for everyone, what's inclusive, will work for usually everybody.
Yeah, and of course we can all think about how we felt when we've been in the minority voice.
Mm, indeed. Yeah, yeah.
So, looking ahead,
Hmm.
what do you hope readers will take away from Wired Differently Understood Together, and how we can all play a part in building communities where everyone feels seen, valued, and supported?
Yeah, what I hope is that people start to think about how they're showing up in the world, the judgments they're making of other people. So if someone appears odd or rude, to just take a moment to pause and think, what else might be going on here? And to be curious. So that's what I want people to take away, because that's how having awareness is the first step in fostering change.
Absolutely. And finally, if people would like to get a copy of the book and connect with you
Hmm.
otherwise, how would they do that?
So the book is already available for pre-order in most good bookstores.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
So if you search for the title Why Differently Understood Together or search for my name, it should come up. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, on my website, which is arabaconsulting.com. ARABA consulting, or one word, .com.
Thank you very much, and hope
Thank
to
you,
see you
Rudy.
again soon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rudy. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.